in the systems workshop and joined water recycling checks. She still wrote notes in her tablet, but her words had changed. At first, her notes were full of numbers and rules. Now they held lessons, small sayings, and even drawings of the plants she cared for. The humans around her began to greet her warmly. Some asked about her world. Others laughed with her when a tool slipped or a valve stuck. She started to understand their humor, their light way of carrying heavy problems. She still missed the order of her home, but she could no longer deny the power of this human style. Then came the crisis that would test everything she had learned. It began with a deep vibration in the walls. The sound was low, almost like thunder rolling through the station. Red lights flashed across the corridors. A voice came over the speakers. Warning. Micrometeorite strike on Sector 5. Pressure drop detected. Emergency teams respond. Leora froze. She had studied meteorite strikes in her training. On her world, the rule was clear. Seal the sector, abandon it, and move everyone to safe zones. But here the situation was different. Sector 5 was not just storage. It also held Garden 4, another food source. If they lost it, the station would struggle to feed the crew for months. Mira grabbed Leora's arm. Come with me. They ran down the corridor, joining other crew. Air hissed through the walls where tiny holes let the atmosphere leak into space. The emergency shutters had closed most of the gaps, but one section near Garden 4 was still losing pressure. Jorge was already there, shouting orders. We need a seal. The auto doors are stuck half open, and if we can't close them, we'll lose the whole sector. Engineers pulled at the doors, but the frame was bent. Leora stared at the gap. The sound of air whistling out was sharp like a scream. Her mind screamed the old rule, seal and abandon. But then she saw the workers around her. No one was leaving, no one was giving up. They were fighting for the sector, fighting for the garden. Mira looked at her. Ideas, Leora, think fast. Her chest tightened. This was not a training drill. If she failed, people would suffer. But then her mind replayed her lessons. Start moving before the perfect plan exists. Protect the most fragile need first. Good enough buys time. She forced herself to breathe. She looked at the bent door, then at the emergency foam packs the crew carried. Foam alone would not hold against pressure. But maybe, use the greenhouse frames, she shouted. The support beams. They are strong, light, and coated with sealant. We can brace them against the door and then foam over the cracks. For a moment, silence. Then Jorge's eyes lit up. You heard her, move. Crew ran into Garden 4 and carried the frames out. They set them against the bent door, making a skeleton brace. Then they sprayed the expanding foam across the joints, filling every gap. The foam grew, hardened, and sealed. The hiss slowed, then stopped. On the console, the pressure line steadied. The garden was safe. The crew let out a cheer. Jorge slapped Leora's back so hard she almost stumbled. That was genius, alien girl. You just saved half our food. Mira grinned with pride. See, you are one of us now. But the danger was not over. The meteorite strike had also damaged the main power lines. Whole sections of the station went dark. Life support dropped to backup mode. They had only hours to stabilize power before systems failed. Teams split up. Mira led one group to reroute energy. Jorge led another to repair lines. Leora found herself placed with a small crew in the control hub. Their task was to manage the flow so no sector collapsed. She looked at the screens, numbers changing fast, power surging and dropping. The others shouted suggestions. One said, cut power to Garden 3. Another said, no, cut the workshops. The debate grew loud. Leora remembered Mira's words, teams beat solo. She raised her voice. Wait, we can balance this. We do not need to cut, we share. The humans quieted, looking at her. She explained quickly. We lower the lights in all gardens by half. Plants can survive a short dim cycle. We reduce air pumps to minimal safe speed. We pause non-critical labs. Many small cuts together will save more than one big cut. The crew stared at her, then nodded. They began typing commands. Slowly, the numbers leveled. Power stretched just enough to keep life support steady. When Mira returned, she found Leora at the console, directing others with calm confidence. Mira's eyes shone with pride. You didn't just copy us, she said softly. You thought like us. You acted. Hours later, the crisis passed. Repairs were complete. Lights returned to full. The station breathed again, alive and whole. The crew gathered in the mess hall to eat and share relief. Leora sat among them, no longer stiff or apart. She laughed when they laughed. She even broke her bread roll and offered half to Mira, who accepted with a smile. As the noise filled the room, Leora opened her tablet one last time and wrote her final notes. Humans protect life even when rules say abandon. Humans build hope in dark times. Humans act before fear can stop them. Humans trust each other, and that trust creates strength. She paused, then added, I have tried their way and it works. Later, she stood at the window, looking at Earth turning below. The blue world no longer seemed just distant and strange. It seemed alive, pulsing with the same spirit she had felt in the humans around her. She thought of her own world, where people still waited for permission before taking action, where failures were hidden, where hope was not written in the rules. She imagined bringing back these lessons. She imagined telling her people there is another way. Mira joined her at the window. Thinking big thoughts? She asked. Yes, Leora admitted. I think my people will not believe what I have learned. Then show them, Mira said gently. Not with words alone. Show them how it works, Leora nodded slowly. She knew now that true knowledge was not only numbers and charts. True knowledge was courage, trust, and hope. She had seen it in every human action, every laugh, every quick repair under pressure. As the stars shone beyond the curve of Earth, Leora whispered to herself, Procedures are written by survivors. I am one now, and for the first time in her life she felt not just safe but strong. The next morning Leora woke early. She walked to Garden 3 before her guide arrived. The greenhouse lights were still dim, imitating dawn, and the air smelled of wet soil. She moved between the rows with careful steps. The plants stood tall, their leaves smooth, their color deep. She placed her hand close to one stem and felt a strange warmth inside her chest. It was not her people's way to feel close to plants, but something about this place whispered that life was more than numbers. She opened her tablet and reviewed her notes from yesterday. Procedures are written by survivors, she read softly. It was not easy for her mind to accept that. For years she had lived under fixed rules. Here she had seen humans break the rules but succeed anyway. The thought both scared and excited her. Soon Mira entered the greenhouse with a cup of coffee in hand. Her hair was already coming loose from the bun. She smiled when she saw Leora. You're early, Mira said. I wish to see if the bypass worked through the night, Leora explained. Mira checked the console. The line of temperature showed a gentle curve. Good call, she said. Looks like our plants slept well. Now we can replace the pump properly. Together they moved into the service bay. Jorge, the senior technician, was waiting with 2 other crew members. Tools and replacement parts were set on a rolling cart.
Jorge gave Leora a short nod.
You're joining us? Good. We'll show you how humans fix things when the problem is bigger than one pair of hands. Leora hesitated but stepped forward. She watched carefully as Jorge explained. First, they shut down the pump with a lock procedure. Then they drained the line, disconnected valves, and opened the unit. Inside were parts worn smooth by constant motion. Mira held up the impeller, which had cracks across its edges. This was the culprit, she said. Jorge showed how to replace it. Machines fail. That is not strange, he said. What matters is speed of repair, teamwork, and making sure the next problem is easier than the last. He handed Leora a tool and guided her hands. At first she trembled, afraid she would break something. But Jorge's calm voice and Mira's steady presence gave her courage. Slowly she helped fit the new part. By the time the unit was reassembled, she felt her chest lighten. She had done something outside the book and the result was working. When the pump hummed back to life and the temperature line rose smoothly again, the crew cheered softly. Leora stood a little taller. She began to think that maybe human ways were not chaos. They were another form of order, hidden under movement and choice. Later that day, Mira invited Leora to the systems workshop. It was a wide room filled with machines in different stages of construction. Some looked like drones, some like water filters, and some like strange boxes full of wires. The place buzzed with sound. Hammers tapping, welders sparking, people laughing. Leora blinked at the sight. This is not deep, Mira laughed. No, but it is alive. Here is where new things are born. At one table, a young engineer showed off a device meant to recycle air more efficiently. At another, 2 mechanics tested a rover wheel by rolling it across the floor. It wobbled, then broke off. Instead of anger, they laughed and started sketching a new idea. Leora whispered, On my world, such a failure would end the project. Here, Mira said. Failure is the first draft of success. That phrase stayed with Leora. She wrote it quickly in her tablet. Failure is the first draft of success. In the afternoon, alarms sounded again. This time the call came not from Garden 3 but from Water Storage Bay 2. A sensor showed pressure dropping fast. If the storage tank leaked, the whole station would face shortage. Teams ran to the bay. Mira and Leora followed. Inside, water dripped in a slow but steady stream from a hairline crack in the tank's outer wall. Engineers scrambled. A permanent fix required welding, but welding would take time and risk losing more water. Jorge barked orders. We need a temporary patch now. People began suggesting ideas. Sealant foam, magnetic plates, even wrapping the crack with spare polymer sheets. None seemed fast enough. Leora watched, frozen. On her world, the answer would be simple. Shut down the bay, wait for a replacement tank from the central store, and ration water until it came. But that would take weeks, and the station might not last that long. She heard Mira say, "Think outside the checklist." The words stirred something in her. Leora stepped closer and spoke. What if we use the greenhouse insulation film? It is flexible, airtight, and it responds to heat. We could press it over the crack and then use the heater to seal the edges. The room went quiet for a moment. Everyone turned to her. She felt her skin grow warm, but she stood firm. Jorge's eyes lit up. That could work. Quick thinking, alien girl. The crew rushed to gather the film and heaters. Leora joined them, her hands steady now. Together they wrapped the damaged spot, pressed the film tight, and heated the edges. Slowly the leak slowed, then stopped. The pressure on the console leveled. Cheers echoed through the bay. Mira clapped Leora on the shoulder. That was your idea. You saved us water. Leora felt a strange rush of pride, stronger than before. She had not just copied human methods, she had used them. She had broken from rules, looked at what was possible and acted. And it had worked. That night in her cabin, Leora could not sleep. She sat with her tablet, writing her new lessons. Teamwork spreads risk. Failure can teach faster than success. Quick solutions buy time for stronger ones. Courage matters as much as knowledge. She looked at the words and realized something deeper. On her world, survival came from obeying the book. Here, survival came from trust. Trust in others, trust in trying, trust that even in error something could be learned. She closed her tablet and whispered to herself, humans are not reckless. Humans are hopeful. For the first time in her life, Leora felt that hope in her own heart. She arrived at Orbital Campus 12 with a careful step and a face that showed no fear. Her name was Leora, and she came from a distant world where every action followed a rule, and every rule came from a long book of logic. On her world, there were no sudden changes, no messy feelings in public, and no plans made in a hurry. If a tool broke, the person who used it would stop, file a formal notice, wait for permission, and only then fix the tool according to exact steps. Leora liked the order. It made her feel safe. It made the universe feel clean. Earth Station was not like that. On her first morning, she saw 3 human engineers arguing, nodding, laughing, and building a thing that looked like a mix of pipes, wires, and a cooking pot. A red-haired man called it a prototype. A tall woman leaned over it, tied a ribbon of insulation with her teeth, and said, "If it works, we celebrate. If it fails, we try again." They high-fived. Leora blinked. On her world, tools were not allowed to look like that. On her world, no one touched a device until a committee signed a form. Her liaison on the station was Dr. Mira Hahn, a biosystems specialist who wore a gray jumpsuit with oil marks that never seemed to wash out. Mira's hair was always in a bun that started neat and ended messy by afternoon. She smiled often. She asked many questions. She also listened with care, which surprised Leora. Humans asked and listened at the same time. It felt like a contradiction, and yet it worked. "You wanted to study human methods," Mira said as they walked along a corridor with a long window. Beyond the glass, Earth hung like a blue coin. "You will see our good habits and our bad ones." "I expect to learn your algorithms," Leora said, holding her tablet close. "I expect to record your steps. I will compare them with the methods used by my people." Mira nodded. "You can write steps. But here is a secret. Humans often start before the steps are clear." Leora paused. "That seems incorrect." "It seems risky," Mira agreed. but sometimes the world moves faster than a perfect plan. They stopped at a greenhouse module called Garden 3. Sun lamps glowed above neat rows of lettuce and small pear trees in smart soil. Warm air smelled like leaves and water. Leora's nose twitched. Her world had rock gardens and fungus farms and caverns. This was brighter, softer, almost friendly. She touched a leaf and pulled back her hand. The leaf felt alive in a way that surprised her. She had known it was alive, of course, but the touch felt like a greeting. Mira walked to a console. "This week you'll help me watch humidity and temperature. Garden 3 feeds a few hundred crew each month. It is also a good training ground. Plants are honest. They tell you when you make a mistake. How do they speak?" Leora asked. Mira smiled. "They droop. They brown. They slow their growth. You will learn to read them." They spent hours learning the system, pumps that drank water from a storage tank, thin misters that made a fine cloud, a web of sensors in the soil, and a loop of warm air that moved under the floor. Leora recorded each part, each value, each line of code that watched the plants. It felt good. Numbers fit in her mind like stones in a path. At noon, a chime sounded. Lunch. In the mess hall, Leora saw crews from many places. A miner from Mars Station sat next to a pilot from Nairobi. A botanist from Kolkata told a joke to a mechanic from Rio. People traded bites of food across the table. Leora sat stiffly with her tray. Sharing food among non-family members was rare where she came from. She watched Mira break a bread roll in half and offer it to her. "We call this a first-day share," Mira said. Leora accepted the bread. The flavor was warm, a little sweet. She nodded. "It is acceptable." Mira laughed softly. "High praise." In the afternoon, they returned to Garden 3. Leora noticed a tiny drop hanging on a pipe joint. She pointed. "There is a leak." Mira looked. "Good eye." She tapped the pipe and put a bowl under it. "We'll fix that after check cycle." "Why not fix it now?" Leora asked. "Because if we open the line now, we'll drop pressure in the mist loop and these seedlings are in a sensitive hour," Mira said. "Sometimes you respond to the most fragile need first." Leora wrote the sentence. Respond to the most fragile need first. It was not what she expected from human methods. It felt soft, like choosing a child's comfort over a schedule. Yet when she looked at the tiny seedlings, their thin stems like threads, she understood a little. Late in the day, the problem came. It was not loud at first. A slow drift in the temperature curve. Garden 3's warm floor cooled by 1 degree, then 2, then 3. The sun lamps kept shining, but a quiet alarm began to blink on the control console. Mira frowned and opened a system map. "Heat loop failure," she said. "Circulation pump is stalling." In Leora's training, a stall meant the pump should be shut down, a repair request filed, and a replacement scheduled. She reached for the screen. "I will initiate safe stop and send a notice to station maintenance." "Wait," Mira said. "If we stop the loop now, the temperature will fall fast. The pears will get stressed. The lettuce will try to protect itself and slow growth. We'll lose a week. There's another way." Leora felt a small heat rise in her chest. "But the safe procedure is safe for machines," Mira said calmly. "We also have to be safe for living things." She started moving. "Come on." They hurried through a service corridor to a storage room. Mira pulled open bins. "We need flexible duct, a spare fan, and a portable heat cartridge. We'll make a bypass to keep warm air moving while we talk maintenance through a proper fix." Leora froze. "Make a bypass? That is not in the procedure." "It will be on the whiteboard in 5 minutes," Mira said, tossing a coiled duct to Leora. "Humans write procedures after we survive the first time." They reached a hatch and climbed into a crawl space that hummed with the station's heartbeat. Leora held the duct with both hands. Her mind shouted about rules, but her eyes kept going back to the graph she had seen. A line falling, plants waiting. A memory rose, the leaf that had greeted her hand that morning. She took a breath. "What is the plan?" she asked. Mira looked pleased. "We tie into the return vent here, run the duct above the floor baffles, and push warm air from the adjacent module for a few hours. It won't be perfect. It will be good enough." "Good enough?" Leora repeated the word slowly. On her world, the phrase did not exist in technical work. Work was correct or it was sent back. But the phrase did not sound lazy in Mira's mouth. It sounded kind. They reached the vent. Mira used a simple multi-tool and asked Leora to hold the light. Leora did, her fingers steady. She watched the quick motions. Loosen a clamp, slide the duct, secure the ring, check the seal. Nothing was elegant. Everything was direct. She could see the logic now, but it was a different kind of logic. It did not come from a book. It came from the room, the people, the need. When the duct was in place, Mira set the portable fan and heater, tested the airflow with a strip of plastic, then looked at Leora. Flip the switch. Leora pressed the switch. Warm air began to move. On the control console, the falling line slowed, trembled, and then crept back up by half a degree. Mira let out a slow breath. Okay, that buys us time. Leora looked at the line and felt a strange pride. She had not followed the written steps. She had helped anyway. The plants would feel less stress because of a duct and a fan that were never in the plan. She did not know if she liked this feeling. It was new. It was strong. Back at the console, they called maintenance. A senior technician named Jorge joined them. He wore a patch with a cartoon wrench and spoke with calm confidence. He listened to Mira's quick summary and nodded. We'll rebuild the pump tonight. Good bypass. Next time, call me sooner. I've got a better heater. Next time, Mira said with a grin. Jorge looked at Leora. First day? Yes, Leora said. Good save, he said simply, and left to gather his team. Leora opened her tablet and started a new page. Human problem-solving first observations. She wrote, start moving before the perfect plan exists. Protect the most fragile need first. Build good enough bridges to buy time. Call for help early. Teams beat solo. She paused and added, procedures are written by survivors. In the greenhouse, the seedlings stood tall under the gentle light. The pears held their leaves. The air felt warm again. Leora walked between the rows and listened to the soft whisper of the fans. She thought about the strict halls at home, the measured steps, the long forms. She imagined walking into those halls with a coil of duct and saying, we can keep the plants safe now, we can write the rule tomorrow. The idea made her smile just a little. Mira joined her at the end of the row. You did well, she said. How do you feel? Leora searched for a word that fit her new thought. I feel useful. That is a good feeling, Mira said. Tomorrow you can help me replace the pump properly. Today you learned why humans sometimes act fast. Leora looked at Earth through the window again. The blue world seemed to pulse with motion and change. Perhaps that was the human way. Perhaps that was why stories spoke of humans surprising others. Not because they were the strongest or the most clever in a silent room, but because they moved together toward a fragile need, even before the ink dried on the plan. She closed her tablet and stood taller. Tomorrow, she told herself, I will learn the proper steps, but today I learned the reason for steps. And in that quiet, warm greenhouse, surrounded by steady leaves and soft fans, Leora took her first real step into the human way.